Hello, everyone. Welcome to TS311 Sustainable Tourism Development. My name is Maria Tausinga, and today I'm going to do this PowerPoint presentation on carbon footprint. In this presentation, I will talk about the notion of carbon footprint, way to reduce carbon dioxide emission by tourism, method of carbon dioxide offset, and then look at some tourism industry travel activities, which was given in our assignment handout. And this activity consists of a group of six tourism travel from Germany to Solomon Island. A family of four travel from Australia to Naviti resorts in Fiji. A couple travel from New Zealand to New Caledonia and Vanuatu. Lastly, a USP students travel to Singapore. I will also look at the total calculation of how much carbon emission released by the individual activities, as well as compare them by looking at why individual activity produce more than the other activity, and then suggest ways of how different sector and stakeholders of this trip can reduce their carbon footprint. Notion of carbon footprint. Firstly, what is carbon footprint? According to these writers, 2011, Wright, Cam, and William, they state measures of total amount of carbon dioxide and methane emissions of defined population activity which considered all relevant sources. By looking at the notion of carbon footprint, we are looking at the process of emitting carbon dioxide to the atmosphere. And let's start with the greenhouse gas, or the GHG. It's known as gas released to the atmosphere, which affect the upper layer of the atmosphere. Carbon dioxide is one of the greenhouse gas. And then greenhouse gas, that carbon dioxide released to the air through anthropogenic, which is a human activity. And the example of a human activity is tourism industry. Tourism is when people travel from their usual place to other place for different reasons, either for holiday, business, etc., which is they contribute to carbon dioxide emissions directly, such as plane and transport, etc., or indirectly, which is accommodation and food, etc. In this table, it shows clearly the total amount of carbon emissions released to the atmosphere by activities in the world, which is approximately 4,423.7 million tons. And within that number, 5% of that number is produced from the tourism industry, which is equivalent to 221.2 million, which is a quite big number. And this information were released from the tourism industry 2010, which was adopted from the COP25, Madrid, Spain, the 4th December 2019. However, how are we going to decrease and reduce this number of carbon dioxide emissions? Firstly, I will look at avoid destination. Ken and Hong Bing 2011, as well as LEPRA ETLAL 2015, state tourism have higher value of travel but with low carbon emission. For example, if I want to go for holiday to Australia, to reduce carbon emission, I can do my holiday in Fiji, which is much closer, even though I have to spend more on air ticket return from Fiji than return ticket from Australia. Secondly, is travel light. According to Howe et al. 2020, plane burn more fuels when it's heavy. Travel lights, I what what I mean by travel light. When travel, we encourage ourselves to only take what is necessary to avoid overloading it. If we take unnecessary stuff, we add onto the mess of the plane. Thirdly, use direct rota and stay longer. According to Tapett's 2019, a non-stop flight for tourists to their destination help reduce carbon gas emission. Lastly, but not the least, use train and public transport more. According to JJAC, SecJ's, and the other two writers, 2019, the tourism can reduce carbon emission in transport by using train and public transport more instead of individual vehicles and cars. So, what is carbon dioxide offsets? Or what is the method of carbon dioxide offsets are we going to use? As we look at the offsets, Lovell and Barkley 2009, offset is the opportunity or counteract that can prevent or reduce greenhouse gases entering the atmosphere. When travel by plane, we cannot offset carbon dioxide emission, especially long distance. Example, from Germany to Solomon Islands, it takes 27 hours. And because of that, we cannot replace a plane. But we can fly sustainable by choosing more sustainable airline and avoid transit. We can offset carbon dioxide emission by using public transportation and minimize use of air condition as well as use open fire for cooking methods and stop using or burning the fuels. As I have mentioned before about four tourism industry activities that we needed to calculate, in this table I have calculated the total amount of carbon dioxide emission released by individual group. As you can see, each group have different travel distance, including the transportation, different type of food consumed, different activity they do, and different accommodation they use in their trip. So this table represents the carbon dioxide emissions of 4 different groups, which is the 6 tourists, family of 4, the couple, and the students. The group of 6 has the highest number of carbon emission release, which is, as you can see in this graph clearly, 41% of carbon emission released to the air or to the atmosphere caused by this group of people, as it shows, which is they have the large number of participants as well as long distance travel, which is they travel from Germany to Singapore and they have to stop by 2 destinations and they take about 27 before they arrive to their final destination. That's why they contribute large number of carbon dioxide. The USB students has 23%. With a family of 4 has 21%. Why this? They have differences of 2%. This may question by others why carbon emission released by one person bigger than the group of 4 people. This can be true and that can be wrong. But in this calculation, it shows clearly the distance travel, which is the USB students have a longer distance than the group of 4. From Fiji to Singapore, it's far than from Australia to Fiji. As well as the students travel to Singapore to visit family, and he or she can tour whatever or wherever she can go. But the group of 4, they have a certain target, which is the field trip, and they have a certain place to go, which is not much for them to travel around. As you can see, the table shows clearly the different number of emission released by the transportation, accommodation, activity, and the food and beverage. How are we going to reduce or prevent releasing carbon emission to the atmosphere? As I suggest, that we avoid using long distance and get used for short distance by plane and food. Why do I mean by food? For the food, we have to consume the short distance distribution or consume the local food, and that can help reduce the carbon emissions to the atmosphere. Or use 3 R's. 3 R's, it's reduce, reuse, recycle. Whatever we use. For those who can reuse something or recycle material, that can help reduce carbon emission. Go green and replanting trees in where you go. Even though, like, for example, from Germany to Solomon Island, if you had time, you can be able to replant a tree there. Lastly, avoid wastage. Avoid wastage of food, not only that, but shopping enough for you. Do not over shopping when you travel, and these can be reduced. And there are some more, but this is what I can suggest for now. To conclude, you and I are the basic causes of carbon dioxide emission. But on the other hand, we are the reduction of carbon emission if we can follow what we suggest. Thank you.